Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to the FPL Script. This is season 3, episode 14, our Gameweek 10 preview, and we're looking at mostly the gigantic question for managers, which is to Salah or not to. Some people have obviously been enjoying the fruits of a no Haaland life for a while, and they're not really relevant this week because I imagine their teams are close to perfect, or maybe they have really small conundrums to deal with some of the flags that we have available in FPL. However, I'd say most of us managers, us included at least, between JD and myself, we've got that question to ask. But let's just start with Game Week 9. How was Game Week 9 for you, JD?
Hi everyone. I would say I don't want to crib because we've had such poor weeks prior to this one that I'm just going to take this one. Chris Wood. Obviously, I was on a flight from the US, and while I was in the flight, Forest v Leicester was going on, and I managed to find a stream, as in the airline was streaming the game, and I managed to catch both of his goals, which was like a great FPL moment because I was so tired at that point of flying into. I was, I think, like 10 hours into my journey, and that's something that I'll definitely remember for a long time. Like that's the dopamine hit you play FPL for. So I would say that's like the one big thing. And Palmer, like we've discussed this before. I wanted to make my team more robust, so I went with Palmer on wildcard 8, which I was sort of looking at the fixtures, and like I also said, I didn't want to make the same mistake like I did with Mbumo, like looking just at the fixtures and nothing else. So I'm glad that Palmer at least delivered in this one, even though he blanked against Liverpool away, which was always a long shot. So glad about that. But Fran has very kindly cropped the bench, which has 8 Nouri second on my bench. So I'm glad I don't have to look at that again because him versus Gabriel was not really a toss up on expected value. But I was really thinking about whom I should play just because Gabriel was playing Liverpool. But in the end, I went with Evie and Gabriel got subbed at halftime. So yeah, other than that, I think I have to be happy. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, even on the Ait point, I don't think that's your fault. I mean, like he scored
I know,
from a
right?
set
It's
piece so late in the game. It was a bit ridiculous, to be quite honest.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Myself.
Oh, just to mention, sorry, the triple captain, right?
Mhm.
I'm just going to say that lucky not to triple captain Holland because
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, my logic always was I owned him in game week 2 versus Ipswich. If I didn't triple captain him, then there's nothing that has changed for me to triple captain him now. So I guess we'll discuss what happened based on yesterday's results later on, but probably I'm not going to get a better opportunity potentially. So we'll see. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, my logic was I just wanted to do better than anyone who triple captained last week, and I did. So yeah, hold that. No, I'm kidding. It was a very good decision. I think even Rob T shared his sort of spread odds. They were slightly better than Southampton by the deadline, but negligible. He
Mm.
had better XG, I believe, so better chances than the last time he scored a hat trick. For me, under my stewardship. But it's been a pretty awful experience, generally speaking, as a Holland owner for the last few weeks. And I think the one that I feel still the most hard done by is that Gameweek 8 captaincy where Saka was on the table. And
Mm.
I probably should have Captain Saka prior to that for both weeks, 7 and 8. And I didn't do so. And that was like a huge opportunity for free risk that I feel like I missed out on for no particular reason other than maybe trying too hard to misread Saka's minutes. Um, but yeah, something to think about. Obviously, the outcome was brutal there in terms of 16 to 2 points. But hey, it's been a pretty tough time owning Holland. It was more than justifiable. And then I think we're now faced with a decision where we have to consider life without him if we want to. In my position, I got 61 points. Guardiola, amazing once again for the
Mm.
team. This was the week where my hit for Palmer finally balanced out, and I think I'm starting to outscore the theoretical team that I would have kept, although there's a free transfer saved, right, under the Bruno
Mm.
team. However, one thing that I can't account for is I think I've already gotten 3 or 4 price rises from Palmer, and Trent has dropped in price since then. So it feels nice, and in a way, in game week 10 here, where we're still struggling for maybe 3 defenders for most teams, having Leaf Davis in place for game week 10 is actually really nice because his EV's better. He's in theory the best defender that I have this week. And unlike StatsDan and his corner glitch, I think Davis is the glitch in terms of being able to get some points from Ipswich defenders, although he just got 2. Still outscored Gabriel though. So once again, another week where he's doing the business. But yeah, game week 10 for me is the big one with Davis, and I still feel that my team is strong enough because I now have 2 free transfers to address what's going on with my team. Some of the managers, like people who wildcarded into Palmer, they're in so much more of a better spot. You included, because you had a fresh wildcard. You've got Palmer in place. I think a lot of people moved into Palmer last week, and sometimes that's the lottery of FPL, because you would have still, I think most managers would have been more than happy to own Son. And in any case, most of the non-Hollanders would have maybe gone for Mbumo vice captain, which would have been even more painful for me. But as things turned out, yeah, pretty average week with the big dumps, disappointing. And the only big gun for me, I'd say, was Guardiola. And that's not really enough, because I think that was only a green for me because I'm in a pretty low rank in the world, as opposed to I had a stellar week, which we've been feeling this way the last few weeks, where we're basically getting reds, grays, or minuscule greens, and that's life.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, so big topic this week, as we said, was Haaland to Salah, and also just the general debate. We can start from EV terms. I think one thing I'll have to mention, and we've discussed this amongst ourselves and some other analytics managers, but Haaland's decay for me is still really, really poor on review. I don't know why it's so aggressive, and we can clearly see in cases where he gets rested, the priority is for him to max out his minutes in the 2 competitions that matter the most. They were knocked out in the AFL Cup yesterday. He got fully rested, even in a game where I think Pep was trying to chase as much as possible without using Haaland and Akanji specifically. And yeah, once you sort of apply Haaland's proper decay, I think the issue still is he would be a worse captaincy theoretically with an equivalently sort of minutes playing Salah, which is possible because per our sort of, I guess, Egyptian journalist Mo, Salah might not be called up for the national team. I think that's the rumored reports from some outlets that are local to him, and that's really good minutes for game week 12 prospectively versus Southampton away. And then the next 2 fixtures, game weeks 10 and 11 chiefly, I think are just simply clear for Salah on review EV and on market odds. So that I think is tempting the decision to swap. But then for a lot of managers this week with lesser free transfers and maybe also just wanting to roll, that option is still on the table just to hold Haaland. So I think you're leaning to rolling Haaland, right? Rolling with Haaland?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so perhaps because you mentioned we are approaching this from an expected value point of view, it's worth discussing that for my team, I'm looking at 4 drafts that I have, and in each draft, I just delayed the move from Haaland to Salah by 1 week.
Okay.
So it goes Haaland to Salah in game weeks 10, 11, 12, and 13. And the more I delay the move, of course, I'm getting lesser EV out of it because Salah's EV is sort of front loaded and the captaincy sort of make up the bulk of the differential. But if I look at the eval score, for example, I get not a lot of difference now. And this is based on, I don't know whether there have been updates on minutes with respect to players that are a part of future plans in these drafts. I need to have a look because I made these drafts 2 days ago. But as of now, it looks like at least postponing this by 1 week, I probably could get away with it in massive data or EV terms. Because I was thinking, so for example, Son being fit for Ipswich is the only way I can delay till 12. Because if Son is not fit for Ipswich, I have to make that switch. I can't captain Haaland in game week 11. I have to captain either Salah or Son. So if Son is not fit for Ipswich, then I have 3 free transfers and it's easy. But I really want to get to post-international break, because if I have 4 free transfers during the international break and something happens, I think I'm much better off having those extra free transfers. But then again, I'm very wary of being extra cautious on this front. I was trying to make sure that there's a mixture of being, how shall I put it, practical, but also trying to maximize EV. So we'll see where we get with that.
That's fair. So you've got what, 2 free transfers now? Is that what it is?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Same as yours,
Yeah. So do I. I don't think your team is any worse set up than mine, but I still think I'm gonna punch on the move because, yeah, ultimately my defense looks fine for this game week. I do want to bring in Cunha this game week, and maybe that's because I own like Rogers and Dibbling, and they specifically.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
you'll be playing Kuna, right? And that plays a big part in this because even if I bring in Kuna, I have to bench him, which makes me think it's perhaps on like it's a border case where okay, it is expected value positive, like net positive, but at the same time, it looks like I can delay it by 1 week. But I'm fully aware that Salah having 2 home fixtures followed by an international break where he's probably going to get rested for 2 weeks is just means that he's going to be playing at 290s at least in the Premier League and 180 plus in the Champions League against Bayer Leverkusen, because that is, I think, one of Liverpool's toughest games. The toughest game is obviously Real Madrid, but hopefully we'll know from the Bayer Leverkusen minutes that what the pattern is going to be for the next 2 games.
Yeah, that's fair. In my case, I mean, DCL doesn't look particularly great, but yeah, I would have to play one of Tyler Dibbling or Rogers, and that's why Cunha is probably such an appealing transfer in my case. But even with, like, let's say Haaland's minutes a bit adjusted, a little bit of nerf to sort of Salah's perfect on paper minutes on review, trying to be taken account for. So that's sort of the position that I'm in. I think the big thing with Haaland too, just to mention on him, is in the future, the weeks where you're probably the most worried about missing out on a Haaland captaincy in the future, I would say is probably Gameweek 14. But other than that, I don't think there's too many fears about going against the Haaland captaincy in terms of, once again, another classic week where you have a gigantic gulf in EV. Maybe later down the line in game week 20, we'll deal with that decision. But yeah, for now, it seems like it's a good time to sidestep Haaland potentially, and I think a lot of managers are considering it for that reason. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go perfectly, because as we've seen the last few weeks, we've probably had the EV edge on captaincy every week and not really gained anything from it. So that's life. Shall we jump into a ideal wildcard draft though for Game Week 10?
Yeah, and we've done this often, right? Where looking at wildcards does give us a sense check of whether our moves are moving towards the right direction. Shall we say, from an EV perspective? So yeah, let's go with this.
So this was the review default on 100 in the bank value. With my sort of, I guess maybe I might have some bankable players, but Valdemar, Son, and Flecken as your goalkeeper pairing. Interesting, I guess, that the EV hasn't moved too much off of Flecken. We've seen in team strength models that your Brentford team have clearly moved the needle on attack, and then the opposite way in defense. But Flecken still apparently is trusted to be able to save the goals that he continues to let in week after week. As far as the defense, it's Pedro Porro, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Lewis, Dallo, and Dunk. And we know there's a bit of doubts on Dunk, but actually the update today from Fabian was very positive. It seems like Dunk can be included into the squad for Liverpool. So better than the 3 or 4 weeks estimate that we got from Andy Naylor. So that's journalism for you. In the midfield, we've got Salah, Palmer, and Bruno, and Eze. Eze clearly has a hamstring injury, so this is probably not true to life, but arguably you could still look at alternative options like Garnacho in the meantime. Could provide you, I think, less expected value, but similar. Although it's always curious to see whether review would like to spend more in another position. After, I guess, it accounts for the fact that Eze is probably out for at least 1 game. As far as the front line, it's Solanke, Raul, and João Pedro. So João Pedro, positive news update for him once again, which I also think is not yet factored into review, but he apparently could be included into Liverpool squad this weekend. We know that he's coming from a long-term injury, and we also know that I think his competitors have played really well across almost all positions within the attacking lines outside of the sort of wings, where they have a couple injuries like Minte still out, I believe. So yeah, Welbeck there, Rutter playing in multiple positions, including right wing, but can clearly play in the 10. I have to imagine that João Pedro's minutes is still going to be pretty stifled over the next 2 weeks, and in theory, he should have a long international break to get back to full fitness and maybe finally deliver some expected value for managers 13 and beyond. And I think that's still sort of mirrors review sort of expectations for him in terms of minutes. But then the big question mark around João Pedro is going to be whether he's really ready to start and going to play those minutes from 13 plus, which I still think is a bit debatable. But I know a lot of people still see him as the best player in the Brighton team for now. But it's just the case is they have really, really good depth. Any thoughts about this wildcard draft in general and the structure in place?
A couple of things to point out. So you mentioned Brentford's defense going in the opposite direction to what we want. And I saw Thomas Frank quote where he's actually acknowledged this, which is, I mean, obviously he can see it, but at the same time, it's rare to see him actually acknowledging this exact fact where he's emphasized that they've focused more on attack and less on defense, and he's trying to see how they can probably get move towards the mean a little bit in both attack and defense. So I don't know. I mean, Mbumo is still so cracked that it doesn't make a difference for him. But perhaps if you have, let's say, Flecken, hopefully there'll be at least one clean sheet in the next couple of game weeks. The second thing was about João Pedro. I find that Raul is a nice proxy for him, right? So, for example, if you don't want to boost João Pedro's minutes because you're unsure, what you can do right now is maybe put his minutes down to 0 and work off the fact that you will only own one player in that price range. So probably work off the fact that Raul is your backup option if João Pedro is not fit in game week 12. Because anyway, you don't want him for the next 2 weeks, right? It's Liverpool and Man City. So, and then there's the international break. So like you said, it's the perfect times to bring him in for game week 12 if he's fit. And if he's not, then Raul is, I think, a great option. And I would also urge people to look at Sartalp's graphics where he publishes like certain price ranges and positions for those price ranges. And then it's like a range of game weeks who comes out on top in an ensemble model. So it's really useful just as a visual sort of sense check. And in that, I found that Raul Jimenez's name crops up quite a bit just because the more game weeks you include, the better he becomes. So if you want to make a robust move, I think, yeah, Jimenez is just him right now. And it's also assuming that he's fully on penalties now, 100% pin share, which I don't know if review still has that or if
It
you
still has it on around 75, 80, something like that.
Yeah. Which is okay. I mean, if you want to include some uncertainty of it sounds so ridiculous when I say it or when I think about it that Muniz might get his place back. It's not happening, is it? I mean, based on what we've seen this season, so it's going to be very difficult to say no to that sort of expected value. I think Solanke might also be a little fatigued based on what we saw yesterday, where first of all he could barely move after the game, and secondly. Was it someone on Twitter or did we hear it from Ange? I think it was someone random on Twitter.
There was a Spurs journalist who suggested he looked injured. But there's nothing really to it.
Exactly. So I'm not going to, add more fuel to the fire on that. I just don't think there's any credible sources with that. We know that there are credible sources with the SNUs, and we just saw what happened with the Dunk news, where I was thinking, okay, he's definitely out for 3 to 4 weeks, and this Fabian giving us better news than expected. So, yeah. Other than that, I mean, Luis, what do you make of Guardiola's sort of press conference? Because, like I said 2 weeks ago, I actually trusted him with Rico Lewis when he said he's so vital right now to the way they play, which is why I bought him on wildcard, and he's played every single minute since then. Literally across all competitions. So the question is, do you think that's going to continue for now at least, just because they don't have any replacement? So who's going to play there?
Yeah, I think Rico Lewis's minutes like perfectly fine. We know
Hmm.
I think Walker's out until the end of the international break, and there's just not too many structures where they can, I guess, afford to bench Lewis. I think my instant reaction to Lewis being in the starting squad yesterday was that they had to play Lewis. So it's kind of
Yes.
nice to see Pep's quote, which a lot of people find it funny to, I guess, read it ironically given the past, but this is
Hmm.
such a different situation. They have so many injuries. This is not like a fully fit Man City squad. There's around 6 or 7 first team players that are out, and so in that context, it makes a lot of sense that Lewis has great minutes, and I'm not too concerned really with him. Um, and if I'm wrong on the weekend, then I'm stupid. But yeah, that's sort of still my take on Lewis, and why I've been pretty comfortable from him from the start, because I always thought that the punt to go for Lewis was worthwhile, in the
Hmm.
position that I was in so many weeks ago, and I still think it remains the case probably today, even though the fixtures are noticeably worse. Um, there's 2 United players
I
here.
guess.
Any thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say is for the first time in ages, I would not start off the discussion by just bashing the coach because Ten Hag's no longer the coach. So and we know that Amorim is going to take charge after the international break. So there's going to be a couple of weeks of rude ball, and whatever you want to call it. I don't even think it's new manager bounce. I just think the fixtures are so good. It's I mean, if you want to buy United players, you should just buy them. But I also think you can just avoid the Chelsea fixture and go for it from next week. Like you said, Garnacho instead of Eze makes a lot of sense, and Dallo could actually be really good value. I'm just thinking if Amorim comes in and he has to play wing back, that could actually be even better because that just makes him completely like, for example, if we play in a tilted way where one wing back has to tuck in or something of that sort, then Dallo is just completely OP in both senses. Like he's out of position and he's overpowered. So perhaps wait for game week 12 if before tripling up. But also the Ipswich fixture is what, game week 11 or is it 12? I think it's 12, right? The Ipswich
The
fixture.
Ipswich
Let me
fixture
just
is 12.
12. Yeah, exactly. So that perfectly coincides with Amorim
Mm.
coming in, and yeah, and then the best fixture of the season yet for United. So I would probably wait for that. But also, Bruno seems to be good value, and the more he falls in price, the better value he becomes. So probably revisit that in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. In my position, it's it's when I look at this team, I think it's quite close. If I make that Korea
Mm,
move, but I also know that I'm quite a bit richer. I'll just be Trentless, I suppose, in this situation. When we look at the wild card this week, there's going to be availability tax on Gabriel and Guardiol, so understandable that they're not there. But Guardiol is also a weird case where I think you kind of have to manually adjust his minutes, and I feel like this was something that I probably mentioned in the pod previously, but if you're confident about a City player, you kind of have to treat them like a 0-90 player, because they're either going to play and you're going to have a sub, and I think the easiest case is just to understand what happens if you if you need a fourth or fifth player as a defender to come in and auto sub sometimes, but you're going to get, for most times, the right decision. I think if you have the right City player, and they're going to play 90 minutes most of the time. Whereas looking at an extremely aggressive decay at around 74 minutes isn't a true depiction of the EV you're probably going to get from making a good xMins call with a City defender. So
mm,
yes, Trent is there, and I think this is actually the perfect landing spot for Trent. So I have no complaints about this draft. But then I have a couple players who are taxed in terms of minutes this week, and I feel like against this wild card it looks bad for this game week, but then going forwards, I'm happy I guess to go against it. So like in Bruno's position, for example, I've got Son, which is also a place for Saka in the future, but I'll have a similar team. I'll be Eze-less as well this week, and still owning Tyler Dibbling. But I do think a route towards Eze is pretty much necessary in the future. As far as, let's say, some of the other positions, when I look at, let's say, Raul and João Pedro, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, where you can't really afford to go both of them. But
mm,
I also appreciate that maybe it's the case where in a few weeks' time, if you're let's say wildcarding this week, or you're looking at a wildcard just for an example of what to look ahead for. Solanke is still here, but they have been some pretty poor results recently, and I think, you know, in a few weeks' time, you could very well just want to move Solanke off to João Pedro or something like that, and keep an open eye to that is nice. But that Solanke spot is ironically also really good for a Havertz or a Jackson opening, which I'm sure a lot of managers will be looking for too. So there's a couple conundrums I guess people will have to deal with, and then, you know, worst case, you can always think about Cunha, who just generally has an extended, insane amount of games. Like it is crazy to think about how bad Wolves' schedule has been and how good it looks, because obviously they've played basically the top half of the league and then are about to enter into a journey against the bottom half. So whilst I don't think that makes me that excited for Ait Nuri, it definitely does make me excited for Cunha. And one thing I've noticed about Cunha too is, you know, he's got absolutely insane market odds EV, absolutely nuts.
It does. It does.
You know,
Yeah.
I think he's on paper a top 4 forward, right? Which just already tells you how mental that is, and how good the run is too. So that's something I wanted to mention. In the defensive line, the dunk value is still there. I think we discussed Fleck in a bit. Dallow's still amazing. Porro is the other pick where I think once again it's fixture related, where Spurs just generally have a good run of games, and we've also seen a pretty nice boost for the Spurs defensive EV. Maybe that gets affected by Van de Ven being out, but otherwise he just seems like such a good defender that I still don't own.
It could be offsetted by Madison getting less minutes, which just means that Poro is on more set pieces. So,
but we've seen some
I mean,
take,
I know that,
for example, more corners, right, as well.
yes,
And I
that is
think
true.
a few more free kicks, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So I wonder if that.
And I'm also
has been accounted
thinking clean sheets are more of a stable source of points.
Yeah.
So I would think that maybe the impact of Van de Ven missing is going to be much larger, not much, slightly larger than the gain from getting some corners and set pieces back.
Yeah, although I think reviews are sort of accounted for that already, so I'm sure, you know, Poro's EV is true and genuine, as it was last season when I think you and I owned him for quite a fair bit, and to our benefit. So interesting time where there's a lot of defenders that aren't in Arsenal that we can look towards that can still cost a fair bit, but could provide you that sort of value. Any interest in a Reece James, or do you think it's not worth considering or even discussing him?
See, just because I've gone for such a robust draft on Gameweek 8, I can't even entertain the idea of going him. But to be honest, if someone does go for him, there's definitely some, I don't even want to say upside, but there's definitely expected value to be gained.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of probably going to get only real minutes expected value and never xMins expected value, because I don't think reviews hive mind minutes are ever going to adjust to him being a regular starter in game every week, in and out. So it is just going to be, you'll just have to be happy with Arvin's MD win.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, didn't he play? Did he play 90 minutes last match?
I thought so, because I was basing my thoughts of that, but
Yeah.
even if
so it's tempting, isn't it? Because
it is. It's always tempting. Yeah, yeah. It's.
But you can make that decision on game week 12, right? Like, there's absolutely no need to jump into Chelsea, who have United away and Arsenal next. So I feel like keeping Reece James in the back pocket is interesting. One thing that I find quite interesting within my own team is I'm forced to make a potential defender move next week, right? When, let's say, Porro has Ipswich, or Dallow has Leicester at home. But I also wonder, you know, what if I could consider just going Reece James as well? And, you know, I might do it. Why not? Because I don't want to take this game very seriously right now. Nah, but
that's for sure.
There's lots of options, and I think that's nice. So shall we jump into xMins this week? Because we've discussed a lot of players.
We've discussed a lot. Yeah, exactly.
But there's still, I think it's nice to talk about like what's intricate about solves and things like that. We had a pretty nice City discussion, but maybe just to start off there, I think Foden's got exceptional xMins now, because every little player who could possibly bench him is alive and well. Just kidding. They're all injured. Savinho got injured yesterday. Grealish is out until after the
Looks like
international
it's not
break.
as bad, right?
Sorry,
Is
is it
it
not as
not
bad?
as bad? Or, yeah,
Um,
that's what I read, but maybe I'm wrong there.
I didn't see any
I,
additional updates on it. What was the update that you
I
got?
just saw,
Was it today?
I just saw some. Yeah, I saw today that it's not as serious as it was first feared, but that's the language that anyone uses. So it could just be complete nonsense. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure it's not a Twitter physio
I guess
because
I'm confused because he got
yeah,
stretchered off, but that could be true. But then also I still think his like that probably guarantees Foden's minutes for this weekend anyways.
I think it does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
So yeah, you can probably apply like an aggressive decay to Foden because all the big boys should be back out into international break, and that will eat into his minutes. But a lot of people were probably even considering having to resell Foden this week, and I think that's not necessarily the case with the knock suffered from Savinho, right? Because it's going to be most likely Bernardo right wing, Gundo and Foden in the center, Kovacic, deeper, Nunez in the left wing as he has been for the last
Mm,
three games now actually, and that's
yep.
that. So yeah,
And I
that's
think one way you could do it, like you said, is maybe set his overall minutes to, let's say, something like 60, and then just manually adjust game week 10 minutes to like 80 plus,
yeah,
which
that's fair.
automatically gives you a huge decay.
Or even gaming 10 plus 11 because that. I mean, at best, he gets
Fair.
less, like worse
Yeah,
minutes than
fair.
11, but it can't be that bad, I think, still.
Fair.
Um,
Because the international break is probably a reset point
yeah,
for
for a lot
City
of
as a
players.
whole. Yeah.
And Eze, that's a tough one, too. I mean, we don't have any updates on him, but
No.
it's a hamstring injury. We know it could be up to 2 weeks. It could also be much more aggressive. Like, for example, Allison has been out, and he was rumored to be out for 1 to 2 months. So
Mm.
so it can be bad, and we know Eze has had a case with injuries before. So hard to say without scans, but we'll get so many updates tomorrow, which is also why sometimes it's kind of sad to run segments and just gaslight ourselves into things. But the midfield is pretty dire right now of options. Like Bowen actually looks quite good. I really like the kind of update we got in terms of knowing Paqueta's minutes aren't very good this season, and Bowen being on Pens as a deputy, I think is huge. Um, but
My only concern with that is I am not too confident in his penalty taking
okay,
abilities.
okay,
But
interesting.
then again, yeah, I was also going to check transfer mark to see if how far off the mark I was
I
with
think
my.
he's 7 for 10. So it's not too bad. It's one of those cases where he takes a few more and suddenly
It's not enough.
it looks
Exactly,
exactly,
it's
yeah.
not enough, and it can easily switch because if he misses the next one, it becomes so much worse, right? It's right now he's such a low sample size that I don't want to read too much into it, but um, uh, the reason I said that is based off anecdotal evidence. What I remember from a few seasons ago when he was on penalties is that whenever you used to take a penalty, it always used to be. It was never like a powerful penalty or never in the corner. It always used to be like, okay, just barely get it in.
Hmm.
But that's enough, right? I mean, you don't need to be Bruno Fernandes or Palmer as a penalty taker. You just need to be, I guess, point 0.8 or plus, which would ensure that you stay on penalties as well. Because unless you are a suboptimal or subpar penalty taker like Watkins, you would be off them. And that's a very, very rare case. I'm also looking at Arsenal, and we got a Calafiori update already. Yes, he's not going to be available till after the international break, right? So that's that. Do we know about Timber? Did you hear anything about Timber's availability?
No, I didn't really hear anything about him. I did see a photo
Yeah.
of training today, or like a video of training today, and I did see Gabriella and Ben White um in pre-field training, if that helps
Okay.
anyone. So it seems like the
Hmm.
news on Gabrielle is pretty good, but I can't say on Timber.
Oh, you're not playing him anyway, right? This game week.
Gabrielle,
Gabriel, that is.
in theory, I'm not, but if Guardiola doesn't play at all, then I'll play Gabrielle.
Hmm. I see where you are. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the
Um.
midfield. There's not too many options. I think Johnson's minutes are still pretty understated. I still have him quite high. We also know that Odegaard got injured again.
Yes,
But
he did.
there's genuinely some awful options in the midfield. Semenyo has a mild sort of availability tax applied due to the suspension threat. So I think people who own him, might not be seeing, I guess, the full fruit of keeping someone who could maybe stay away from getting suspended after this game here in Game Week 10. But I still think he's a very, very good pick, because otherwise, one of the trends that I think we've seen over the last few weeks is generally anyone priced above 5.x in the midfield, or even some of the 5.x midfielders up until like 6.x are absolutely trash compared to the forwards outside of Eze. And they don't really compete in terms of EV or squad structure. So I think that's why when you look at that sort of wild card draft that we just saw, it has Eze, but it's very likely if Eze's gone that you might actually wildcard into a team that doesn't have any of those cheap players, even though we mentioned the likes of Garnacho or Johnson, etc., because it's just better to spend that sort of money on forwards who actually play, probably better minutes, to be honest, than some of the midfielders nowadays, and have a lot more EV. And part of that is also, I think, some of the bonus changes, right? Favoring some of the forwards more so than the
Yes.
midfielders. And it's nice to kind of see that value come in. Do you have any thoughts on Solanke? I know this is not an xMins thing, but it's just his EV is still just obscenely good. I have a bit of a hard time grasping it watching Spurs play, but I think it's one of those cases where he's not had any chances the last few weeks, but nothing is stopping him from sort of being a Chris Wood type where in future games he can just get a tap in or two and suddenly we're not. I'm not I'm not comping him. I'm just making the point that
I'm joking. I'm joking.
no, it's a fair point, because I mean, like, Chris Wood was last season, I think, the best player in the world at getting XG per shot. So I feel like Solanke is either going to he's not going to take long shots. He's probably only going to take shots when he's sort of crashing the box, that sort of thing, and or if there's a couple rebounds and he sticks his foot in and gets a tap in. So that's the only point I'm making there. But he clearly hasn't had a single chance that's respectable so far. Any thoughts?
No, but it's so weird, right? The games preceding this sort of drought, which were United and Brentford, and now I
Yeah,
realize United is obviously an outlier because
10 men as well.
we played unjustly with 10 men.
Yeah.
But Brentford was the game before that, and he got like 3 xG from those two games,
Mm-hmm.
which is, of course, a gross overperformance. I mean, it's not sustainable at all. But that followed by a 4 game week drought just makes me think maybe this is some sort of he's also trying to find his style of play within this team,
True.
and also the teammates around him are also not stable, right? He's playing with every week he's playing with a different front three, or every game I would say. So even yesterday he had to play with Werner and Kulusevski, right? Sorry, Johnson, my bad. Kulusevski was in midfield. So I just feel it's such a weird case where at Bournemouth we knew for sure that this is what he's going to do, where it's just going to be XG and just getting XG like anything, and then being a subpar finisher, which is fine because we want XG. But now this is a slightly different case where I don't want to judge his performances based off of either scenarios, not the 3 xG in 2 games, not the what is it, 0.1 xG or 0.3 xG in 4 games. It's something
Could be
ridiculously
worse.
low.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the EV still is pretty okay, given the fact that he is on penalties when Son is out, and I value that very highly. So I don't know what your plan is. Do you plan on moving him on in the next
I
couple of
think
weeks, or where are you?
if I generally don't extract any value from this man versus Ipswich at home, I think I'm just going to leave open an option to go to Isak on game week 12, and I'll call it a day there, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I'm not touching him until after that. But yeah, that's sort of the rough plan that I've had in my head is whatever moves I make in the future, I leave that 0.4 for Isak on the table. But it's very possible that I mean, some people are still going to be looking at like the likes of Havertz and Jackson, because that's a nice sort of window to revisit those sorts of players. But I really do like Isak as an option on that game week specifically to sort of replace Solanke with, if I have zero faith in the man. Other than that, I guess the nice thing about the forwards is you can always drop down to a Raul, right, and bring him in
So
game week
the
12.
Chris Wood update, by the way, because Chris Wood came off against
Yeah.
Leicester and he was icing his foot.
Mm-hmm.
So the update from Nuno was pretty positive, and looks like he'll play another 80 minutes or so, because Avoni can't get more than 10 minutes right now, and given the fact that Wood is scoring every game or every other game it was until a couple of weeks ago. I just don't see how he doesn't start and play a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I think Chris Wood is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
What a question. Saka versus Son. If Son was fit, any thoughts about them? Let's say we're not expecting a lot of minutes for Son in Game Week 12, so it's not really even a discussion.
Hmm.
But or sorry, on 10. But
Yeah.
if we
10,
start from
yeah.
Game Week 12, it is a poor game for Son on paper. But any thoughts on that sort of competition there, or do you think Saka is just absurdly clear?
It's weird because up until the end of Game Week 8, I would have probably said Son, just because Son played minutes and then Saka got injured and he didn't play both the Champions League and the Premier League game. But now that he started and he played a lot of minutes and Son is completely out, he was out for 3 games in a row. I want to say 4 games in a row rather. It's 2 Premier League games and 1 EFL Cup game and 1 Europa League game. So based off that, it's so difficult to call. I think it's all based on minutes. If you give me equal minutes for Son and Saka, I would not make that move. But based on the minutes I have right now for both of them, I would probably move on from Son and move into Saka in Game Week 12. Just because City is the perfect time, even though we know for a fact that Son always scores against City or always plays well against City. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Do you have any thoughts? Because I'm assuming the reason you asked the question is you're probably eyeing a move of that sort.
On paper, I've eyed it, but it seems like from sort of a solver perspective, it's not something that I'm really being asked to do because I think their EVs are so close, anyways. And
they are. I'm
like,
looking at it right now. It's very close. Yeah.
It is a bit of like a yo-yo on, and it really just comes down to whether I can get as much and extract as much value from the F-switch game, right? At this point. But if I can move there, I think I'll do it. And if I have less confidence in Eze's minutes, then I have less reason to move towards him. And the same applies to someone like Calvert-Lewin and João Pedro, because a lot of people are sort of looking at Game Week 13, I think, as a nice landing off spot to go to João Pedro. But then if I can technically hold on to Calvert-Lewin, for example, for like Game Week 14, then, I could maybe delay that move as well. And then I can focus my moves on getting Son out, getting Solanke out, whereas the rest of my team, in theory, should be still in a good spot. Because I don't really need defender transfers unless I really want one in this coming week here. So that's sort of my minor conundrum, is whether I need a defender transfer at all. Because look, it's not a good fixture for Gabriel, but sometimes you'd rather make, I guess, moves over stronger players and on larger EV swings than getting someone like Dallo. But it might be the case that I probably have to go Dallo anyways. But Gabriel being fit for me, for example, for Game Week 11 versus Chelsea away, not ideal. I think I could get away with it, and so those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about. But I think that Salah and Cunha move for me is a bit forced. So that's
could you, if you make the Salah Haaland swap,
yeah,
could you then go Guardiola to Dallo and have enough money to do Son to Saka? I'm assuming you will, right?
I've already got money to do Son to Saka now.
Okay. So that doesn't matter.
For me,
that
it's just a case of with Man City having some tougher fixtures and Gabriel having a poor one next week. It seems like the best move for me is still to make a defender move effectively on Game Week 11. So that's sort of what I'm thinking about. But we have options, and unfortunately, I'm closed from Isak as well, because there was a point where I could have considered going Isak before the Salah price rise, where I could have actually, for perfect money, done Rodgers to Salah, Haaland to Isak. But I just don't like. I didn't like the move on paper with the Newcastle games for the next 2. So, as I said, I'm going to revisit Isak then, and maybe just hope that the Solanke EV disappears, and I've got more preferred moves by next week. Is sort of my thoughts.
Oh, by the way, I don't know. I completely missed the fact that Rogers got his 4th price rise, which means that you can actually sell him for 5.2. I was thinking, if he didn't, that would have been really unfortunate, because his 360 sub just means that he probably won't get that much of a boost in terms of transfers in unless he scores like a hat trick or something against Spurs, which is, to be fair, not that impossible given Spurs just seem to be conceding every single week.
Yeah, that's true. Any other xMins on certain players that you wanted to discuss?
I mean, I don't want to discuss it, but just one note that Dibling's minutes, I've really nerfed them because I don't think he's going to play 60 plus in any given game. As in, not a lot of minutes past 60. So let's say something between 60 and 70 is where I have him. But perhaps even that could prove to be too much. It's just because anytime they have a good fixture, Dibbling is on insane expected value, which, okay, I mean, I'm clearly not seeing something that review is saying, which is fine, which is why we review anyway. But yeah, I just want to keep it as low as possible so that my exit strategy is for Dibbling is Salah anyway. So hopefully we can get rid of that conundrum altogether.
It's an interesting one. So I was reading actually up the comments from Russell Martin. He's just very clearly explained that Dibbling is struggling with fatigue. And he'll have an international break, for example, to get rest, I would say. But it might be a case where, yeah, they'll have to dial back his minutes over the course of the season because he's still arguably too young to play maybe full 90 minutes right now for the Premier League. But I still wouldn't be too cautious on his minutes because I think if he gets these rests in key weeks, then he really should be still clocking in good minutes. And especially if you can kind of time it around windows like international breaks, etc. In my case, I'm selling Dibbling anyways. But if anyone was sort of still thinking about the idea of whether he has any use in FPL, I still think he does. But only in those exceptional weeks where you've got fixtures that are actually good for Southampton and they're playing at home, would I really consider him. And there's also a pretty noticeable gulf between Dibbling's expectations per review and market. So
yes,
there's also reason to, I guess, be a little bit worried about how good Dibbling is compared to his review, because even at 60 minutes on review, he actually seems like a good pick on some weeks.
it's crazy, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, we can probably move on to captaincy, right? This is the next segment.
So captaincy once again, as per review, goes in this order: Salah, Haaland, Palmer, and Saka. It's, to be quite honest, super clear for Salah, and that's probably why a lot of people are pushing for the move. But he did get a few minutes, was in the AFL Cup. Maybe he can get subbed off a little earlier. Maybe the gulf isn't as big as it is on paper. Haaland is more than likely going to close out the 95 minutes. So that can edge things out. And then Palmer and Saka a little bit far short this week. So yeah. And any thoughts on captaincy from your side as a non-Salah owner?
You know what? The worst thing is probably going to happen, which is Salah's going to have 100 plus EV.
Do you actually think
EO.
so?
Oh my
Do you
god.
think so?
Given
Actually, yeah,
the fact that he's
100%
already
is
close to
pretty low,
70%,
right?
right?
If you own Salah, you're gonna
Yeah,
captain
exactly.
him, I feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he's already on 70% EO in a week where no one was going to captain him because the top three choices last week were Holland, Palmer, and Mbumo. So even in a week like that, he's already on 70% EO. So I'm actually thinking he's going to be close to 150, maybe. Maybe, because there's so many people who are eyeing up a double move. It just feels inevitable at this point. And it's not even about free risk. I just feel like this is something I have to try and see out. And so if I've resisted the FOMO for this long, and I don't see why I won't follow through, unless again tomorrow is going to be a very critical day because a lot of press conferences and a lot of news. Let's say Ange gives us the worst possible update that Son is going to be out for like 2 weeks. Then I think my hand is forced because there's no way I can go without Salah, given that I'll have to captain him in both game weeks 10 and 11. So yeah, that would pretty much seal the deal. But as of now, I am on Holland captain with minus 0.6, which is sorry, minus 1.2 once you captain suboptimal captain. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really complain this week if I'm gonna move towards Salah.
Yeah,
I'll just
absolutely.
say, oh,
Yeah.
I got the EV when I inevitably lose to Haaland, I guess. And I'll feel
But
fine.
you just, what do you feel like? What do you feel like? This okay? This is like a very FPL script like topic. It's like completely based off like what do you feel is going to happen? Because I just feel like it's going to go exactly what is the prevalent trend,
I,
and Salah is going to outscore Holland. I just feel it's going to happen so
I feel
much.
like we're due for both of them going big, so why not? I think that's gonna happen. More
Wow,
likely.
that's yeah, that's you should go into politics, bro. That's such a non-answer. Holy,
Let's
oh my god,
go. Let's
that's
go.
crazy. Let's go. Anyway, we probably have some chat questions
Yeah,
or people in the chat
I'm
that
sure we do.
um
Okay. Luther says, say it with me, Rob is
yeah.
washed. Statsan is the glitch in the Matrix, and that Mo Hisham is a journalist for CVVs. Okay. Hello, Adam. Hello, Christopher. Trini says Haaland will be his cap in most weeks except game week 13 if he keeps. Shocker. Shocker, that
Yes.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd hope so.
I mean,
If you're gonna keep Haaland. But there's a lot of people who do own Haaland and Salah, right? So I guess like they live in the theoretical best of both worlds. Um, Somehow I guess I haven't really defeated the Haaland plus Saarlanders or Salahers, and it's depressing really with my cast of great rotating players who do nothing. Um,
by the way, what is your team value? Because you also mentioned that
okay,
you've had some
are we
great luck
saying
with
team
price rises.
review as per like selling ITB on review or
Let's just go
the class the
with the
classic?
value which you can see on. Yeah, exactly. Because
103 milli. I'm speed running it,
okay,
my guys.
okay,
They tell you
okay,
not to minus 4 for Cole Palmer,
okay,
but little do they know that I'm rich.
okay,
I'm balling.
okay. That's crazy. That's actually crazy.
Pipe down.
I'm not even at 102.
That's
That's
right.
actually crazy.
Y'all poor,
Crazy. Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm a
Fair.
terrorist,
Fair.
and that's also okay. Um, Luther
Clip it.
says wildcard draft for Doc. His team needs one. Yeah, maybe if you don't peer pressure him into a wildcard, he might actually still have one. Christopher says my worry as a still Pedro owner is there's no rush to get him back, and I think that concern is shared by me. Right, he's not really a winger type of player. Joao Pedro is. I know he can play there in theory, but maybe he'll play because there's a lack of depth. It could be the case that, for example, you see Rutter play on the right wing and then Joao Pedro plays in the 10. Like that could be something to accommodate some of the depth issues that Brighton have in the wing spots. But even Adingra is sort of
Hmm.
playing, Matoma still playing, so they have enough depth there too. I wouldn't be too concerned with Joao Pedro, but I still feel like if you're a holder, I mean, with the news so positive around the corner, you might as well see it out. And who knows, we might get a better intonation of what his minutes will look like with the two tough fixtures, and you can revisit the idea of whether you want to keep Joao Pedro in your team on 13 if you
Hmm.
really have that same concern. But presumably, you're keeping Joao Pedro because you never had any intention of playing him these two next games. So this will give you the information that you need. Solanke's still in wildcard 10. Yeah, and that goes back to I think the difference slightly between market odds and review, right?
Yeah. Pen share. Pen
Yeah.
share is a big thing as well right now.
You think it's the pen share can't be that big though, can it?
No, it's not. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's just pen share, but you mentioned the difference between Saka and Son, and I accidentally had the setting on 100% market odds.
Okay.
So I just
And that
switched the
always
slider back to
favors Sun,
0%.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So when I switched it back to EV, oh no, sorry, it's the other way around because Son has 0.8 or 80% pen share on the review compared to market odds, which still think it's uncertain between him and Solanke. So the gap actually is much more on market odds between Saka and Son than it is on review data. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. Solanke still has great fixtures, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Good evening, lads, from Pablo. He says Raul in tonight. I mean, let's have a look at some of the price rise websites. So stats is
Yeah,
Cunha
I'm not.
Raul rising. Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't justify it. I just can't.
No. So just a side note, all the price rise sites can now rest easy because I'm no longer tracking them.
Fair.
So
And Cunha as per hub as well, definitely rising. Garnacho to Pickford as well potentially, with Gabriel projected to drop. But this is obscene, and why people are making transfers like before press conferences, I do not know. My desperation to get price rises is killing me inside. I've missed 0.2
It's
value
fine,
from
bro.
Salah and Cunha.
You
Shame.
can we can wait a little at 103. You're probably like top 100 in the world right now on team value.
No, I don't think.
I'm sure people must be on 105, obviously,
Yeah,
but they are
yeah.
not playing FPL. They're playing team value.
I think yeah. In the world of team value, I'm doing pretty well. In the world of FPL, questionable. Other questions in chat. This podcast is slur from Marku. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, from our favorite cat content creator. Luther says the Athletics Villa correspondent Callum Gill suggests Rogers xMins going down.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, grandfather clock again. But to be honest, Dilksy was right about Salah's minutes, so it's fine. Timber played last night. Okay, that's actually a big error on our part, right? I did see what Arteta mentioned about losing Ben and losing Gab, but yeah, Timber playing last night is a positive. He got subbed off a bit earlier as well.
My bad.
So
Okay, my
the
bad.
thing is, at end of the day, you're gonna be playing Timber and Calafiori, right?
Oh yeah,
On the
for sure,
weekend.
for sure.
So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, Arsenal's ideal world. I'm not
No,
making moves
Calafiori
tonight.
is definitely out, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're talking about like from an FPL owner, like if you own Calafiori, you can still play him just in case Arteta was being Arteta, which is quite possible.
True. Although, yeah, fine. I mean, he can do whatever he wants, Arteta, but
Yeah, exactly.
not too many people are going to consider Calafiori over this run of games. So, the best thing with Arsenal is, and the most interesting thing for me is, like, if Calafiori comes out of this and he's not injured, what is going to happen? Do Timber and Calafiori just like perpetually share minutes, or does Ben White lose some of his minutes as well, as we've seen as well? But I think we've only really seen Ben White lose minutes when his health was sort of put in question. So for now, I think I as much as people like Calafiori and the fact that he can score a goal versus Man City, which is completely accidental in my opinion, it's still tough to justify the move.
For sure. Yeah. Gautam says Happy Diwali to everyone. So yeah, Happy Diwali. One question: Solanke, Son, Semenyo to Raul, Salah, Winks, best 4.5 midfielder. This is
I mean, if it's not for a hit and you have a strong team that doesn't need a bench, it's good, I would say.
But are you actually going to forego Solanke plus Son versus Ipswich right now? It just feels so bad.
Yeah, but I guess you get the Salah EV as well slipped in.
Fair. There's always that. Yeah, so.
I guess the comp is mostly Raul and Solanke, and then also like Raul competing versus Emmanuel, like good, because Raul will have bad games. I think the key thing about Fulham is that they have like 3 good games in a row, and then it's actually mediocre for 4. So anytime you're going Raul, I think a lot of people are going for him because they have 8 attackers. So in this instance, by going for Raul with 7 attackers, I think that's the small detriment there. But if you've got confidence in his minutes, then he could overshoot expectations anyways, and he could just like he could be a very, very good perpetual play, I guess. I say that as I remember him doing a dink assist versus my beautiful Man City defense, but whatever. Any thoughts on Darwin, actually? That's the one xMins corner player that I forgot to mention. He will probably play 85, 80, 60, in my opinion, over the next 3. Something like that. I think that's fair.
I would say the third one is probably even lower for me. Just because.
Think so? You think Jota just starts though?
No, I'm weighing the 2 scenarios of
the decay as well.
Yeah, plus the decay. So it's but like you said, if the purpose is to figure out what moves you're going to make, then putting his mints at 50 makes no sense. You might as well run it with 70 and then 0 or 20, something like that, which would average out to around 50. Yeah. So 70 and 30 might be the best case. just to run both kind of solves. My biggest concern is if you don't get him to play, don't get to play him versus Southampton, is it even worth spending 2 free transfers? Because you'll buy him and then sell him in a couple of weeks.
My concern within my team structure is I don't have the same confidence over Solanke and DCL, so I know I'm definitely spending transfers, even though review doesn't necessarily see issues with those players. It's possible that I think one of the two just becomes a future issue, so I therefore need to spend a transfer on a forward that is not really currently anticipated, by a default solve. And so that makes Darwin near impossible for me. There's absolutely insane free transfer value. It's just like, I think if I was probably a little bit more FT heavy, and I owned Wood over DCL, maybe I would have done
it. Fair. That's a fair point.
That's fair. Let's see. I think that's it in terms of questions, right? Have we missed anything?
I think so. Yeah, because
Christopher actually asked. Sorry, he said, "What do you think of Watkins and is that João Pedro or
João Pedro? Yeah.
To Raul and Cunha with 2 free transfers? I think it's super worthwhile because there's no reason that you really want to have Watkins over this run of games. Raul and Cunha are great. João Pedro still isn't playing, still doesn't have good fixtures, so you're really just swapping out 2 bad fixture players for 2 good fixture players, and worst case, if you really have to book another transfer for JP in the future, you could, but I still think that his minutes might not be that great, and you're still going to enjoy Cunha for an extremely long time, and 2.3, you can play with that, so I probably would do that, or I just do Watkins to Cunha, and then I maybe forego the Raul move, but I assume you'll need to play someone in that JP position, which is why you've suggested that as well, so if you have to do both moves, I'd probably do them.
Absolutely. And it's crazy to see how many budget forwards have excellent expected value moving forward. So it's not even like it's an EV negative move. You gain EV and you also get to play players who play 85, 90 minutes. Maybe in Jimenez's case, it's closer to 80, but still, it's crazy value for both players.
Sounds right.
I think that's it, right? Yeah. It was a fun episode. I think the main reason was we wanted to cover xMins, which we had a lot of updates yesterday, players dropping out left and right. So hopefully we get some clarifications tomorrow in the pressers and we can make decisions based off that. Hopefully we also get indications of Arsenal lineup, which is the early kickoff, and potentially Man City news because it is in that very lucrative second slot, right?
What news would you be looking for though for Man City?
Not me personally. I'm pretty guaranteed. I mean, I'm pretty much sure Ricoulous is going to start, but I think Guardiola or Foden owners could probably do with more reassurance.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, might hold on to the transfer. Like not you can easily bench Guardiola. It's not a question of transferring him out in your case, but maybe people have moves which are equal and could benefit from waiting for that kind of news. But again, I'm never going to legislate or advocate for that sort of hope that you would definitely get news. It's just that you could. So
do you think Sun starts tomorrow? Or not tomorrow, but
day after tomorrow. Yeah. Whenever the match is. Yes, I do, but that is why it's so critical tomorrow's press conference because, again, Ange is probably the best manager we have, and which makes me very secure in either knowing Son is out or knowing that Son starts. But am I expecting minutes from him more than 60? Probably not. I would say similar minutes to West Ham. And if he comes through unscathed, then we can potentially look at Ipswich with 75 plus. Yeah, that's where I'm right now.
Okay, so you're telling me that I should just go Cunha then? Is what you're saying?
Look, I would say yes, just because it's the perfect it's the perfect divergence for the podcast as well. It's the 2 paths that I'm looking at. If you go down that path, we can easily find out what happens. And you also have the team value, to be honest, to sort of maintain that structure. Even probably look into Salah plus Haaland down the line, because I don't think my team value can sustain that sort of thing.
It's a weird one because of
Ever.
Palmer, right?
No.
His emergence in value has sort of meant that Haaland plus. I mean, some people are literally on Haaland plus Salah plus Palmer, which I mean that's insane. But I think that's probably because they don't own someone like a Solanke, and they're probably a little bit cheaper on defense than we are. But yeah, I think I'm always probably going to be prioritizing Palmer now than, let's say, going for a Haaland plus Salah. But if there's like perfect rotation between Haaland and Salah, I'm sure there's going to be a period where a lot of us will converge into owning both. But I just think it's so tough because with a lot of the players that we have like in weird price points, like Solanke, like some of the other more premium defenders, it always feels near impossible to get close to Haaland plus Salah. And I look at my team and I think I'm never going there without like 3 or 4 free transfers, which I simply don't have. I don't know.
No, but also I was thinking, so if Son is definitely out tomorrow,
yeah,
would that open up a move like Son to Salah, Haaland to Kuna, which frees up insane amount of value for you to use? And then could you utilize that to keep or maybe buy Haaland later down the line? Which I understand it's for 15.4, or maybe he drops, right? Because let's say he blanks next week, and that easily ensures fire sales for someone like him.
Yeah. Tough call.
So I hope you do the moves because it's EV positive, and we also get to see what happens in both situations. Given that we are both on free transfers, we are almost the same in terms of rank. It flip flops every week where I go up by 2 points, you go up by 2-3 points. It's really both of us are struggling in mediocrity. It's wallowing in mediocrity. So yeah. Hopefully things will turn around.
Spicy thing. I might do a -4 back to Trent.
No.
If Guardiola's out, I'll do it. Watch me do it.
No.
Yes, I am.
No. Oh, it's from the Punisher, right? It's the meme from the Punisher.
Well, this time I'd have Trent and Palmer, right? Which just means that I really wanted to get rid of Bruno.
I mean, we will see how that pans out later on. But I think that's enough of random talk from us as well. But thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, have a good game week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.